What is up, everybody? So real quick before we get into the video, we start going over about surge tank installation, surge tank routing, and all that. There's two things I want to say. First off, disclaimer when it comes to this video: if you're going to install a surge tank, be sure that you're very careful when it comes to handling fuel. It is very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. It could damage paint, could lead to a fire if you start having leaks and stuff. So be very cautious when installing fuel system components. The other thing is, when it comes to running a surge tank, there's multiple ways to run a surge tank. You can run it, oh, my light came on. You can run it on a saddlebag setup, which is like the style that's in BMWs, Mustangs, and I think a couple other rear-wheel drive vehicles that run a fuel tank located in the back seat underneath the rear cushion. Saddlebag, if anyone wants to know, is a style tank, and I'll explain this later in the video again, is a tank that pretty much goes over or saddles over the rear drive shaft. Allows clearance so you can run a tank in the center of the vehicle while having the drive shaft run through for clearance. There is some perks, there is some cons. The biggest one is when it comes to drifting, a fuel starvation problem will happen when you start to get a little bit lower. Running a surge tank will help. So under your own discretion, be careful when it comes to doing this. I'm not telling you this is how you want to do it. I'm just letting you know this is how I run it. If you have a different way, you can modify it. The second thing is I want to make a big shout out to Deechworks. Deechworks makes a phenomenal amount of products and everybody knows it. So I'm just letting you know I run stuff from Deechworks all the time. Right now I'm running the 2.5 liter modular surge tank, specifically this tank. It is a phenomenal tank. I've never run into any kind of fuel starvation problems. Anytime I'm coming in at some crazy speeds on the side, I've never run into any problems where I'm running out of fuel, running into starvation, engine bogging out, shutting off on me because of surge tanks. I've been running Deechworks components between their pumps, their surge tanks, and their regulators for the past couple of years, both on the stock M54 and on the Coyote, and a couple of other components in customer vehicles that I work on. If you're looking for fuel system stuff, go check out Deechworks. Between their surge tank, which is a 2.5 liter here, and they also have a 3.5 liter. They also have a 250 pump setup, which is what I run on my in tank, and my 250 inline, which can also be run inside of here, or it can be run externally, all on preference. I run mine externally, so if I have to service it, real simple, real easy. The other thing is they also have things like fuel injectors, fuel regulators, fuel rails, fuel filters, you name it. They've got everything when it comes to your fuel related components. So if you're looking for some fuel stuff, go check out Deechworks. Let them know I sent you. You're not gonna regret it. So now that that's over with, let's just get into the video. And like I said, if you guys enjoy this, please give me a like, give me a subscribe, and give me a comment. I'm open to conversations. I'm down to talk to people about this sort of thing. Everyone's got a different way on how they wanna run it. I like running it this way. If you got a different way, or this is the only way, I'm all open to conversation. No negativity, all positivity. Let's just keep a good line of communication. And on that note, let's get into the video. Hope you guys enjoy it. So here I have a diagram on how to run a surge tank system on the stock E46 fuel tank. And you can pretty much run a system like this on any stock fuel tank if you want to run just a surge tank. It's very, very simple. Now, the reason why I'm recommending to run a surge tank on the E46 gas tanks is because the E46 has a saddlebag style gas tank. And for people that are unfamiliar with what a saddlebag style means, that the gas tank is located on a section of the vehicle where the middle portion of the tank has a huge hump. It almost looks like a saddlebag, kind of like what you put on the back of a horse. Now, the reason why they do that is because the drive shaft runs underneath the gas tank. Some guys I know run the stock gas tank with no surge tank. They literally just put an upgraded fuel pump inside of the gas tank and then later just run it straight up to their engine, whatever powertrain they may be running, which is perfectly fine. The problem with that is that you have to keep this gas tank consistently up at a certain fuel level. If not, you'll have a you'll have a starvation. I almost messed up my words there. You have a starvation concern because the saddlebag tank takes fuel from one side and throws it over that big hump in the center of the tank and transfers it over to the passenger side. On the passenger side is where the main fuel pump assembly is for the E46s.
Now to fix that, you run yourself a surge tank. The surge tank allows fuel to come from the stock gas tank, and it is pretty much like a mini gas tank that sits on the outside of the vehicle. Well, not outside of the vehicle, but outside of where the tank assembly is, like you guys see that's sitting in the back of the vehicle of my U46. And this allows fuel to rise and sit in here. The purpose of fuel sitting inside of here is that it allows fuel to stay stored. So if the tank starts to run low, there's a bit of fuel still in here that allows you to run without having to run the engine starving of fuel. And with that, you may go into a sideways position where you may be chasing somebody, and as you're trying to come up on the door, say you didn't have the surge tank, you come up on that guy's door, all of a sudden, as you're going in a certain direction, fuel starts to go away from the main pump. Now that becomes a problem because you start to lose fuel, which means you're going to lose power, which means you're going to lose the chase, which means you're going to lose the battle. And you don't want that. So a lot of guys will run a surge tank to help prevent in case they ever run into an issue where the tank starts to run low. A lot of guys just say keep the tank up full, or keep it more than halfway, it's no big deal. I like doing it this way because it's safe. So to go over the explanation on how you set this up, like I said, you can run this on pretty much any gas tank, whether it's a 240, a Supra, 46, doesn't matter. You can run a surge tank on any vehicle if it means giving you a peace of mind knowing that you'll never run that engine out of fuel. So the way the 46 gas tank goes, that you have the main pump assembly. I'll put this over here as MP, main fuel pump. This is on the passenger side of the vehicle. The main fuel pump, which I have an upgraded 250 Deechworks fuel in-tank fuel pump. This pump will push fuel from the tank to a line that then goes directly to the surge tank. That surge tank will then fill up with fuel. Now there's two ways to run it. There's a style like the Radium Fuel surge tank, which is a cylinder style surge tank, which has fittings that stick up on the top side, and inside there's a fuel pump assembly that as fuel is coming in, it rises up inside here. There's a built-in fuel pump in here, or you can add different style fuel pumps depending on what you want to do, and it goes and it feeds it, does the same thing as this. You can run an external fuel pump, which is what I'm going to be running. It's an inline fuel pump. You can run that style, which run in the Deechworks style fuel surge tank. You can run it both in the surge tank and out of the surge tank. I'm deciding, before I used to run it in the surge tank, I'm going to choose with running it outside of the surge tank, because in case something ever happens to this fuel pump, it's much easier to access this fuel pump and replace it than to go ahead and disassemble the surge tank, pull the fuel pump out, and then replace the fuel pump. Here it's crack a fitting, undo the power lines, and then just pull the pump off the mounting bracket, put the new one on, and reverse the procedure. So on this style, I am going to have fuel come into the surge tank, fill it up. There is, and the same thing with Radium and a couple other ones, they have like these little spouts that stick from the fuel pump and pick fuel down at the lowest point possible. Same thing with this. Deechworks has a spout that sticks down. It takes fuel as low as possible to the bottom of it and try to get all the fuel you can. It will take fuel from here. The inline fuel pump will pull fuel from the surge tank in, go into the pump, go into a fuel filter assembly, which again, you guys saw over there. That will go through there, run through, come into this bulkhead. This bulkhead will come up and then go into your fuel pressure regulator. Now, everyone's gonna have a different setup pretty much from here up. Some guys have fuel go into the rail and then the regulator is a post-rail regulator setup. I am going to be running a pre-fuel rail regulator setup. And this is how it is designed when running the Ford Performance Control Pack setup. Now, there's two lines coming in and one line coming out. This line is going to go and it is going to feed the fuel rails. It is going to feed this fuel to the engine itself. Now you have the inline, which is coming from the surge tank, from the pump, from the filter up and into the regulator, and then you have an out or a return setup. Excuse me. Now on the fuel forward control pack setup, the forward control PCM is tuned to have a return style fuel system. A return style fuel system on older vehicles used to be you didn't have this line coming from the regulator. You used to have a line that would come from the pump into the rail, and there'd be a second port coming from the rail, and then that would be your return and take fuel that had gone through the rail that wasn't burnt and return it back inside of the fuel tank. Newer vehicles have a non-returnless style system, a non-return fuel style system. But the forward control pack requires that I run a fuel return style that comes from the fuel pressure regulator, comes back, returns, and we're gonna go back into this bulkhead, come back, and it's gonna return back into the surge tank. Now you're gonna be asking, why am I returning it back into the surge tank and not directly back into the fuel tank? This goes back to what I said earlier. Any fuel that hasn't been burnt, like on the old vehicle style setups that had return style systems, that fuel is going to return and go back into the fuel tank. So instead of putting it back into the fuel tank, you run this line and put it back into the surge tank. So you still have fuel running into here, and you can burn this off. Because fuel is going to constantly be pumping from the stock tank into the surge tank. If you can get this return to come back into here, you're always going to make sure that this surge tank is full at all times, which is exactly what you want in drifting, because you never want to run starving on fuel. Now, there's a third port that's coming out of here. This third port is a return or an overflow, and I'll put this here, an overflow. And the overflow purpose is if for some reason the surge tank has too much fuel inside of here, it will take fuel and return it back into this port that doesn't have any pressure in from either direction. It's going to take this fuel, bring it back, and we're going to go back into the bulkhead because I want to keep this as clean as possible. And then it's going to go and return it then back into the stock fuel tank. Now, you may see this line going across in this word that I wrote incredibly horribly on this board, but it says Venturi. And I put that down as Venturi because these saddlebag systems have, on the 46s, have a Venturi effect. The Venturi effect is basically there's a line that comes into the tank and then takes fuel that's being returned. It's going to take fuel and return it back into this port. Now what it's going to do is when you have a gas tank and then you have the saddlebag and then the main pump assembly, okay, this Venturi line goes across and then returns it back over the saddle. Now the Venturi effect is fuel coming back in from the surge tank overflowing and is going to push this through. There is a slit here in the Venturi line that's as fuel is being pushed through here, it's going to take fuel that's on this side of the saddle or the gas tank and it's going to pull it, kind of like siphoning fuel from a gas tank, but it's siphoning from one side of the tank to the other side of the tank. So that way, this side of the tank where the main fuel pump is at is being full. So you're using your entire fuel inside of the tank. So this is going to be an overflow that's going to come back, hit this part of the tank, which is going to be a Venturi, take fuel from this side of the tank and push it over to the main pump side of the tank. So that way this pump is constantly always being full. The whole purpose of this setup is to make sure that this fuel pump are constantly being supplied with fuel so then your engine doesn't blow the hell up running out of fuel. Then you have this little line right here. It's just to vent the tank. That's it. I learned the hard way when you start to take out certain lines. If you do not vent this tank and you happen to seal everything off, as you're filling in from the stock gas location or any location in general, just filling the tank overall in general, if it does not have a vent to remove fuel vapors and fuel pressure that's built up in the tank, it's going to push back at you as you're trying to fill. I've run into that multiple times. And having to fill up between sessions and then going back out on the track smelling like gas gets kind of woozy. So here's a simple overall design. If anybody has any questions, please comment below and I will gladly go over and explain and give different ideas on different vehicles on how I can help you run a surge tank setup. But I do highly recommend running this surge tank setup. It is going to save you a headache if you ever are chasing somebody, and I've done this, where I don't have this, I'm chasing someone just off the stock tank, and I lost because I ran out of fuel. So, recommend doing it.